Hello and welcome to MLW Confusion. I'm your host Rob Cameron, bringing you all that you may or may not need to know about Major League Wrestling and its television programming. This week we are going to talk with close personal friend Albert Gourrier. He may not be terribly known outside of the local area, but he has done a lot of work for professional wrestling in front of the microphone as a ring announcer for SCW Pro and AAW, and now as a wrestling historian. So we're going to talk about his story, what brought him into the realm of professional wrestling, and just what he keeps his eye on in the current era. But first, let's talk about the news. We are continuing to shape up the card for MLW Lucha Apocalypto, November 9th, Chicago, Illinois, aka Cicero, Illinois, Cicero Stadium. The main card featuring lots of luchadores, and then there's an undercard that will also appear on YouTube probably, I think, 2 weeks later usually. I'm not sure if that has a name yet or not, because, you know, not gonna lie, haven't checked it all that much, just what comes down the newswire and whatnot. But it has been announced that we are going to get an official Lucha meet and greet prior to the show. So if you get some VIP ticket packages, you already have to have a ticket to the event. So FYI on that one. But in addition to the ticket to the event, you can also get yourself some VIP action, meet and greet the luchadores who are going to be in attendance, including Mystico, Ultimo Guerrero, Atlantis Jr., Hechicero, Averno, Titan, Magnus, and of course much, much more. In addition to the meet and greet, we have another match signed up for the main card in Chicago. This is for the Featherweight Championship, as Janai Kai looks to defend the title in a triple threat match with Yuvia and Persephone. Just another batch of pins for the champ to knock down, potentially. Though this being a very much lucha-friendly crowd, we'll see if she gets to retain the championship against two of the top women in CMLL. Or, you know, maybe, Contra will just rear their ugly head and just make a mess of it. I don't know. We'll find out November 9th. 3 matches also have been announced for the undercard YouTube taping part of it. First of which is our favorite fast food breakfast sandwich will take on Minoru Suzuki. It looks like the breakfast sandwich is finally setting his sights on Contra after doing a lot of talk and some silly catchphrase out of it. But that's kind of what he does, ladies and gentlemen, when he's not in the ring directly. This is a match that, in theory, I'd be excited for, except fast food breakfast sandwich. It's not where it's at. I kind of wish he would just quietly wander off into the night, bro. But obviously, a lot of folks don't see eye to eye with this lone crazy podcaster. And you know what? That's fine. That's why God gave me a microphone, ladies and gentlemen, to voice these dissenting opinions and occasionally be the voice of reason in the crazy, messed up world of professional wrestling. Anywho, my mistake. I missed a main card thing. So, I may be the voice of reason, but that doesn't mean I'm terribly bright sometimes, or that organized. But for Lucha Apocalypto main card, it has been announced the Falls Count Anywhere for the MLW National Openweight Championship, as Bad Dude Tito with Jesus Rodriguez looks to defend the championship against Matthew Justice. If you've forgotten, last month Tito busted open Justice after his match with Rodriguez, so this is going to be I don't know if it's going to be a feud ender, but it's going to be the latest escalation between these two gentlemen, and, well, who knows, maybe even Matthew Justice will get a taste of singles gold in MLW. And last but not least, this one actually is in the undercard portion of it. Kenta is making his return to MLW, and he's taking on a returning Paul London. That's right, Go to Sleep Club versus the Intrepid Traveler. That goes along with a whole batch of other matches, obviously. Though I'm curious to see how this one will turn out, like what kind of Paul London we're going to get and what kind of Kenta we're going to get. But this is included in the undercard with a Weapons of Mass Destruction match between Akira and Mads Kruger. A World Heavyweight Championship match as Satoshi Kojima looks to defend against Bobby Fish. And then, of course, the aforementioned fast food breakfast sandwich taking on Minoru Suzuki. This is in addition to the main card, so this will be show number 1. So we have the Falls Count Anywhere match match, the Featherweight Championship match. Kevin Knight and Esfinge taking on Ultimo Guerrero and Hechicero. Trios action as Star Jr., Atlantis Jr., and Atlantis takes on Barbaro Cavanario, Magnus, and Felino. That should be a low-key barn burner right there. And for the middleweight championship, Titan versus Mystico versus Averno. So I think that's all the news this week coming out of Lucha Apocalypto. So we'll kind of segue back into the topic of the hour. Albert Gourrier, close personal friend, got hooked up with him through the wacky world of social media originally. We'd ran into some of the same wrestling circles, and then lo and behold, like we say, live in the same metro area, and then curiously enough, like also, support the same promotion in the form of SCW Pro, and as a weird, like, if this would be cooler if it was a romantic comedy, but alas, I'm married and he's married, and I don't think our wives would appreciate this. And by this, I mean, how the end result would be probably running off into the airport in the rain or something. Like, saw me post pictures of an SCW event from my seat, and then like sent me a message on Twitter. It's just like, hey, like, where are you sitting specifically? Where are you at? And like, I'm like, hey, I'm the tall thing with a red t-shirt on. And so like, we finally got to meet face to face at SCW Pro after he approximately triangulated my position. But it turns out, I mean, in addition to being a cool guy outside of professional wrestling, Albert's got an interesting story to tell within the realm of professional wrestling itself. So first, a ring announcer we've had on the show, so that's also very exciting as well. So without any further ado, we're going to go kick it off to some ad space. Get yourself an energy drink, maybe a coffee maker, or just get some coffee for crying out loud, and we'll be back. Un momento. Actually, that's a lie. I also want to take a brief moment because I blanked out on it momentarily. I also want to take a minute to apologize for the audio quality of this interview. It's not horrible. Like, it wasn't bad enough to can it. Like, I know this is strong. That's a strong word of support right there. It wasn't bad enough to can it, but I had mic issues and didn't quite realize it until I did some of the editing, because, well, when I asked, like, hey, can you hear me okay? He's like, yeah. Never mind that it was tinny as all get out. So I do apologize for the sound quality on there. Though, like, as a whole, it's not horrible, but, like, it's usually not up to even my standards. So bear with me on that one. I think I'm done now. So back to your Raise Energy commercial. If you're like me, sometimes you need a pick-me-up to get you through the day. I drink Raise Energy for that pickup. Raise comes in a bunch of different flavors, and more recently Italian Ice, which is great, by the way. And it contains no sugar, so there's no crash after you drink it. And really, like, best of all, if you go through me and go to repsports.com, use my code CASS, you get 15% off your order. So also, be like Cass, drink Raise Energy. All right, we are back. MLW Confusion. This week, special guest in the studio, close personal friend, and, well, of myself and of professional wrestling, Albert Gourrier. How are you doing, man? It's great for you. Come on.
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's a wonderful fall day out here in West Central Illinois. But finally got you on the show. Not that I had to try terribly hard. But for the listeners who haven't followed throughout, the course of this podcast, Albert is a former ring announcer for various promotions, most notably SCW Pro and AAW. And, well, full disclosure, I have not had a ring announcer on the show before. So, like, I'm going to ask all sorts of nerdy questions that everything I've wanted to know about ring announcing in theory. So poor Albert's going to be the one who takes the brunt of this. But we will start it off on the super difficult, super original question I ask all of my guests before they come on. Albert, what started your love affair with professional wrestling?
Long time ago when I was a kid, I was bored, extremely bored. I was trying to looking for stuff on TV. And I came across Andre the Giant taking on two guys in a match. I think it's the first time I ever really saw pro wrestling But I'm looking at that and I'm just amazed by what I was watching, and that was it. From that match forward, I was hooked. So
And would that have been WWF or
yes,
WWF at the time?
WWF.
Were you a WWF child, or did you watch kind of whatever you could get your hands on?
Started off with WWF because that's all that was on, but then gradually over time, World Class came out. NWA, uh, lots of. It got to a point where there would be a lot of wrestling just showing up all at once. Myself, while I like WWF, I was more of a World Class or 80s Jim Crockett Promotions NWA person.
Right on. Like, so you actually have to see World Class on TV. Like, I never got that luxury. Like, I just had, well, World Championship Wrestling, the TV show. For those of you who are younger, that's NWA territory before they formed, before Ted Turner purchased it and they renamed the company that. But like, we only just got like WCW Saturday Night and then whatever WWF shows were on. Like, I never had the luxury of World Class or even really seeing AWA during the first run. I came along just as AWA was dying, though I did have global wrestling for 10 minutes. But this is about you, not me anymore. But World Class. So, like, what drew you to say World Class?
It was something that was different. I was getting into wrestling a lot, and I just like the way they dealt with stories, the way they dealt with characters. Myself, you ask me my favorite wrestler of all time, I will always say the Von Erichs. And World Class was done in such a way and done so well that I kind of felt like I lived in Texas, even though I lived in California at the time. But I just love the presentation of what they did.
And what about the Von Erichs? Like, what drew you to them specifically?
Family environment. They were believable. Um, you felt kind of drawn in whenever they'd be on the screen. That okay, they're just like us. They're just like you. They're just like me. You felt this close connection that they tried to build with you.
Oh, I understand that, or at least as much as close as you could be to them being like us, being all state shot put and track and field star. Okay, that's just me being bitter because I don't have an athletic bone in my body. But no, it's a very interesting way of thinking about it that I like makes complete sense when you, especially when you look back at the history of World Class and kind
Mm-hmm.
of how it was booked. And what are your favorite Von Erich moments? I know, like, come to my head, like the first thing I always think of is the Freebirds turning on the Von Erichs in the subsequent feud, but they've had a lot of other moments in the meanwhile.
Ric Flair pinning Kerry Von Erich pinning Ric Flair to become the world champion.
That was kind of supposed to be David's spot originally. Like, did you were you a David guy? Did you ever think like how big he would possibly get
When I
before
started
his intended
watching
passing?
World Class, I think it had just changed over to Kerry after David's death. So I really didn't see David Von Erich wrestle.
That's fair. I think, like, even myself, I think I've seen the least of David's matches just because so much of it, like, he died so early compared into the national expansion of professional wrestling, as it were. Because like, even like Chris, I've seen a handful more matches about. So, though I'm going to rectify that a little bit because I just got my hands on like an 8+ hour Von Erich set. So I'm gonna break it open one of these days where the wife doesn't have to sit through all 8 hours of it. I almost kind of blanked out on Kerry winning the world championship from Flair because he only had it for like 3 weeks, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have it for that long. I actually think more about his unification match with Jerry Lawler, where they stopped it at the most inopportune time for blood loss because wrestling.
Yeah, there's only one Mona Lisa. There's only one Eiffel Tower, and at the end of the night, can only be one world heavyweight champion. That promo just runs in my head on repeat most days.
And I mean, that's Jerry Lawler. Like, if Jerry didn't have the mouth he did, like, he wouldn't. I mean, okay, that's a lot of wrestlers, but like Jerry in his prime could talk, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate that because they've only been familiar with what he's doing now, which is just a bunch of one-liners trying to be Bobby Heenan, which no one will ever be Bobby Heenan, or the Attitude Era, which like he had his moments in the Attitude Era, but like he did like Memphis Lawler and that mouth on him, like both is a good guy or a bad guy. It's just amazing. But then there's a chunk of footage that it's really hard to come by too. The old Memphis takes because nobody knows who owns them. But okay, so let's fast forward a wee bit. So what kind of got you to transition from being a fan of professional wrestling into, like in your case, picking up a microphone and, well, even you technically got in the ring, but like what got you into ring announcing specifically?
Me, what inspired me, or what caused it to happen?
We'll do both.
Back in the days of WWF, there was a guy by the name of Joe McHugh, and I loved his presentation. I loved his delivery, and it's like, okay, it's like the way he did it was such a, I can't talk today. He did it in such a way that made me think, hey, maybe instead of a wrestler, I'd want to be a ring announcer. And as time went on, I would go to shows at the Los Angeles Sports Arena. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, by the way. And there was people like Billy Anderson and Lee Marshall who were ring announcing. I'm like, okay, this is looking more and more cooler by the day. And I would just see like Michael Buffer, Jeremy Borash, and I'm like, okay, if I can stay as a wrestler, I think I'd want to be a ring announcer. So there it is.
No, and I think that's interesting because you talk to like a lot of wrestling fans, and a lot of fans will be like, "Yeah, I want to be a wrestler." Like, you don't hear too many fans go like, "Nope, I want to do commentary." "Nope, I want to be a ring announcer," or "Nope, I just want to manage." Like almost most folks, the vast majority, are like, "Nope, I'm going to step into the ring and I'm going to drop somebody on their head." So that's cool. So who was your such McHugh? Like who's your favorite ring announcer?
That's a good question. I really don't think I could pick one.
You don't think you can?
Too many inspirations out there. It's hard to like channel one out more than anything else. So
that's fair.
I would say all of them.
Okay, I would just do the stock answer and say Howard Finkel because there's not a whole lot of names I think would top Howard Finkel, but that's just me. That being said, though, so how did you get segue into like being a ring announcer yourself?
How did I finally become one?
Yes.
I've tried to search for so many possibilities of where it started out, but I will go with a computer game called The Sims Online. I knew someone that played it, met them, and one day I went to their place and they would do a radio show. And so I said to myself, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Started doing it, and I would only get like probably 5-6 listeners at most. But as time went on with it, I went to a place called the Bruin, which was a theater in Rock Island that you go to see movies, but you also go see the pay-per-views that they air. And around that time, SCW was just getting off the ground, and they were promoting at the venue of their show coming up. So I went a couple of times. There was a guy by the name of Chris Angle. You might know him as Chris Scoville. Chris Lawrence in his real name. We started talking. He started listening to my program, and we just got a connection. One time at the end of the show, I wanted to keep this connection because I was talking to him. And basically, at the end of the show, instead of leaving, I figured I'd help out. I'd pick up some chairs, help tear down the ring a bit, and try to maintain the connection. And with that, learned a little bit more about the Federation, a little bit more about the group, and eventually got to a point to where I got my foot kind of in the door, sort of. And the ring announcer that they had, his name, basically we call him Tank's dad. Former SCW champion Todd the Tank Whirling. His dad would be the ring announcer, but he was on his way out the door. He's trying to focus more and more out. So every show that I went to, I would ask, "Hey, do you guys need a ring announcer for the night?" And they didn't say no. That's the one thing, they never told me no. They never said it wasn't going to happen. They never said anything like that. They just said not at this time. And then one day before a show, I asked again because I kept going back to this. And they're like, "Oh, okay, we'll give it a go, give it a shot." And there it started.
So you even had to like pay your dues, so to speak, even
Something
within
like that.
like maybe not as bad as some of the other folks, but you got to hang out, clean up after a show, and all that good stuff. And ended up spending the next decade doing ring announcing for both SCW and AAW, correct?
AAW for a cup of coffee for about a little under a year.
Wow. So ring announcing, like, it's one of the unsung heroes of professional wrestling. Like there's someone you don't really think about unless like someone like really good comes along. Like, even like looking like right now, like Samantha Irvin is making waves because she just chose to take put in her notice with WWE. But like again, it's but unless you're someone like that, like you're kind of unsung, and you don't hear about like what it takes to kind of be the ring announcer and like what you have to do to ring announce. So like, I guess where I'm going to segue this back to is just kind of like, wrestlers have a way of psyching themselves up for their gimmick, for their character, for the match itself. Like, as a ring announcer, like, what did you do to kind of like get yourself hyped up for the matches that evening or for the show itself?
Interesting story about that. When I started off ring announcing, I earned the moniker Creepy very easily, very quickly, because there was kind of an age difference between me and the people on the roster. Plus, I'm very socially awkward. It takes a long time for me to connect with people. I would get nervous and just not know how to talk and just more look than actually say anything. Um, Mark Storm, Mark Cool Hobby. I don't know if you've ever caught him on his real name on one of these things, but him being an older person on the roster, he made it a lot easier. He kind of showed me what it's like to negotiate the locker room and get a feel for it. First show that I did, I was very nervous. Tried to find, it's like couldn't really find the energy because I thought the microphone did the job for me. And so I was very low. The energy wasn't there. And then the main event occurred. And I think it was like Stephen Youngblood, Nevin Knoxville, against a couple other people, where part of the entrance was their lights came with their lights turned off. But it was the main event, and I jumped to this main event energy. It's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your main event." And then they introduced me in, or I introduced them. After the show, Steven came up to me and said, "If you want to keep doing this, that stuff that you did at the main, you got to do it. You got to do at the start." And I'm like, "Okay." And as time went on, it took a while to find the energy that I needed to do shows. I mean, there would be sometimes I would have off days, but for the most part, it took a while to find that inner energy that says, "Okay, we're hyping up the crowd, we're getting people into the thing." And it probably took me a year or so to find my stride. Once I found it, then I was able to find that energy to get it up so where I felt comfortable, where I felt more confident in myself. Like, for the longest time, I was a turtle in a shell that I wanted to stay in as much as possible. But the more I did it, the more I came out of the shell, and sometimes I forget how to get back in. But before the show, in terms of getting myself ready, it's like I know what I'm doing. I'm ready for the show. I'm just looking forward to getting out there. Like I said, like I said, prior to this, there'll be times where I would hope like for weather or sore throats or whatever, because I was that nervous that I would hope that I didn't have to do it in a sense. But I would just go, the show would start, and by the time the night was over, it was that quick that it's like I really didn't have to worry about things as much anymore. That nowadays I could just go find out who's on the card and go ahead with the show.
You described yourself as kind of being a turtle coming out of his shell. Did you ever kind of think of yourself as, say, like a character within the show too? Is that a way that you kind of viewed ring announcing, or did you just kind of like, nope, this is me. This is just me projecting?
It's just me projecting. When I was ring announcing, talking about characters, my name was Albert Armageddon because SCW Pro had a bulletin board at the time, and everyone on it had a wrestling name. So it's like, okay, I play SmackDown, I play Fire Pro Wrestling, and my creative character is a hockey masked guy who specializes in submissions and all that, and his name is Albert Armageddon because he's always going to war. And so I used that as my name on the boards. On the very first show, our SCW have commentating running in the background. And I was like, I'm going to get up. I'm going to say, my name's Albert Gourrier, start the show, etc., etc. But when the re-announcers are throwing it up to me, it's like, let's give this up to Albert Armageddon. I'm like, okay, I guess that's my name now. So character-wise, that's my character. But reality-wise, who I am is just me on a different projected, different plane level.
I think the Albert Armageddon thing is hilarious, just because, you know, we've only been friends about 2 years now, ish, give or take. And so like I've never known that name, and then SCW Pro's 20th anniversary, like they announced that, you know, you're going to be one of the special guests of the evening, bringing out people throughout the history of SCW Pro, and here's Albert Armageddon. I'm like, dude.
Yep.
As I said, like you know, we've only known each other for like 2 years, and then like my attendance of SCW Pro has only been since maybe 2013 ish, give or take. Like give or take a year in there. I don't. Time means nothing to me now that I'm old, and
you and me both.
Trying to pick up like specific, like, oh, I got into SCW Pro this time, but this came after my run air quotes in IWA Mid South / IWA Midwest / whatever it morphed into, like right like after that, as I started like moving away from that product. But yeah, just kind of like, dude, Albert's got himself a character name. Did he have a character? Dag. But but speaking of kind of like the character stuff, a lot of the like things that people look at now with the ring announcers is the kind of flourishes for specific characters, or like how you would say certain characters' names. Like, did you have like wrestlers that you gave like a special flourish to, or either by their request, or that you just decided like it would be really cool to like say their last name and take like 5 seconds to just belt out like one syllable?
Not really, though. I have had quite an eclectic blend of weights and locations, like weighing in at 3 deer steaks and a keg, or from Sassyville, or 3 metric tons of fun, and that's the only differences. But in terms of character, in terms of the talent name themselves, not really. Only like really exception would be for someone like Dustin Mosley, where Alex advised to draw out the Paris Islands, South Carolina, but other than that, everything came from me.
You brought up like the weird like flourishes in terms of, call it the wrestler statistics or demographics. What are the two, like, what is the most memorable, either like weight, height, or location that you've had to announce?
Well, the 3 deer steak and a keg was interesting. In terms of fun, I guess the character at the time, he was more like flamboyant, chauvinistic, whatever. So I guess from your it's been used before, but it's like from your mama's bedroom, and every time I'd say that, I got a laugh out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's your mom jokes never get
Mm-hmm.
old. People are still doing this now. I just think about like even like the WWE games like now have a bunch of, they call them like fictional locations, but yeah, they're like his mother's basement, from the other side of darkness, which is one I use quite a bit for my cause, etc. But kind of looking back, especially looking at like the early days of SCW Pro, like who are some of the wrestlers that you kind of got to watch grow up and make, I don't want to say necessarily make a name of them for themselves, but like who are guys that you saw, like looked at and went like, that's someone special, or like you really took kind of like a shining to watching their ring work?
Myself, I will forever say that I'm forever proud of Seth Rollins, Tyler Black, whatever his real name is. I'm not sure if I should say it here, that it's staying kayfabe or not, but basically to see a young Seth Rollins come up, and you could see the fire that he had. You saw the desire that he had. You saw this energy, this desire to be more than he was. And the fact that to see him on TV now as Seth Rollins, as the WWE champion, on this level, pretty much above all else, to look at his early days and see him grow, yeah, it's him. Beyond everybody else. It would be Tyler Black.
I feel like it's a weird, like, loaded question coming out of this area. Like, who's got the most potential? Well, obviously, the guy who's been WWE champion. But that being said, though, like, SCW has kind of been the honing ground for a bunch of young talent. Whether it's your Seth Rollins's, Tyler Black's, even to let's like say your Merrick Braves, to nowadays where they're hand in hand with the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy. So you have those Nathan Frazier's, your Dante Leone's, your one called Manders coming out with like the next generation of wrestlers. And you've got like, even though it's kind of been past your, I'll say past your time working directly for SCW, like you're still kind of a fixture in the locker room, at least kind of, we'll say in a visiting context, if nothing else. It's kind of an elder statesman. Like who have you like gotten to watch in like these later years that have really kind of caught your eye?
Manders, or your nemesis Manders. Heather Reckless, Kaya McKenna, Eric Esnight, Maggie Lee. It's like all these people have just impressed the hell out of me for their work ethic, for how far they've come, for the names that they've made. It's before SCW was wrestling. It was like if you got to like higher levels, you just got there. But it wasn't a wrestling school mentality. Now it's the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy people that are trained, with SCW usually being the first place where they go to wrestle, apply their trade, get better, grow, and then take that and go from there. Fast changes between older SCW and what SCW is now. Merrick Brave has done very well with Seth in terms of their wrestling academy to get people to the next level, to where they need to be, to where the people that we're watching nowadays. I said this on my Twitter a while ago, and the fact that there are people that we talk about in the then. Like, I talk about the Von Erichs, I talk about the Harts, I talk about Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes in the then. People that we talk about in the now, like a Maggie Lee or Heather Reckless or a Kaya McKenna or Eric Ness, I talk about them in the now. It's my hope that later on, years go by, we're still talking about them in the now, but also in the then, back to where they started.
No, that's fair. And like, and the handful of those names that you mentioned, like, have been killing it. Like, I mean, whether it's within the context of SCW Pro, say like your Eric Esnight, who is now the current SCW Pro champion, or your Maggie Lee's, who is killing it in Dreamwave, who just got a match. I think she just was on Ring of Honor not too terribly long ago, and she's also just had a match in Impact too, I believe.
As Maggie Moore.
Yeah, and then obviously Heather Reckless just signed a contract with Impact Wrestling pretty darn recently.
Yeah, now she's teaming with Ash by Elegance.
That I don't watch TNA, but like that is an interesting combination right there.
Heather Reckless signing with TNA is the main reason why I started subscribing to TNA Plus again, because I want to see more of what she does.
No, and like it's. I mean, I'm a big fan. It's one of the reasons I love like SCW is just being able to see people who 5 years down the road are going to be household names, hopefully. And Heather Reckless is the next, the next in line of people who've signed with one of the major promotions. So, congratulations to her, and obviously it's another feather in the cap for the Black and Brave Wrestling School. Loaded question of this one. Gonna force you, and I don't know, maybe get some heat on you though. Which version of SCW Pro do you prefer? The quote unquote old SCW or the product that's being put on now?
SCW Pro's in my blood. It's like I can't pick between the two. It's day and night. It's day and night is two different presentations, but if I had to be with bias, the old SCW Pro, because they allowed me to ring announce, allowed me to do it for a while, allowed me to live my dream of being professional wrestling, allowed me to do it for quite a long time. And so, yeah, I guess if I had to answer this, probably old SCW Pro for that reason.
Okay. I definitely don't mean this is like to slander one way or another. Like that'd be super hypocritical for like both of us to be like, oh, the old days were better, as we're like sitting front row every month in Bluegrass or wherever SCW takes us. And obviously, I'd be like super hypocritical because I just had the SCW Pro champion on last week. But we got our rose tinted glasses for chunks of wrestling history for a variety of reasons. So kind of pivoting off this, because we've been kind of piggybacking, kind of like getting this way anyway. So, since you've since transitioned from ring announcing, and now you kind of become kind of like a wrestling historian, I don't want to use, since you don't full on collect it, I won't necessarily use the term librarian, but maybe a nexus of wrestling information, we'll call it. But like you've been a guy who's kind of made it a point now to kind of educate the wrestling fan of wrestling throughout time. How did you go from ring announcing to being like, hey, I'm going to be the guy that like says like, hey, don't forget, this wrestler from 2012 started over here in this small promotion, or like, oh, hey, don't forget that Buddy Landell was an absolute killer heel, or everywhere in between.
When I did ring announcing for SCW was kind of, there was a point where SCW wasn't even around. SCW made a transition to Pro Wrestling Next, which I did ring announcing for. AAW tried to come out here, so Danny Daniels had me ring announce for them, and then it just stopped. It was just over because it wasn't really gaining traction here. SCW was over. Life took me a different path. SCW would then later come back. At that time, life had taken me to an area where I wasn't going to shows that much. But bringing to the other question, sharing videos of any sort started to break up a monotony, to break up drama. Because at the time I was on Facebook, and when you're friends with people, you wind up having them go against each other. And there was a time when their feud kind of spilled onto Facebook. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to break up a little bit of monotony here, gives other people something to think about or just distractions. So I started sharing videos, started a thing called Alphabet Soup where I tell people to give me a letter. I find a video that's associated with that. It would eventually transition to wrestling videos. And for a while, I would share a video once in a while. And sometimes I would share it for context. Like if I'm on Twitter or if I'm on Facebook and someone's talking about, okay, this was my 5 year or I started whatever, I put a video in for context. And then that just kind of piggybacked and bounced off to sharing stuff on a regular basis where sometimes I would do theme weeks or theme months. One of my favorites is asking someone who their favorite wrestler is and put a week devoted to that. But eventually just started off with just trying to bring context to certain conversations, which then blew up into, okay, I have time. I'm just going to share videos. And that kind of started probably, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. Myself, I never really call myself a historian because the historians are the ones that go out and dig up those obscure pieces of information that you didn't know about, and they're always searching this. Whereas me, I just go find video books off a shelf and bring it to you for viewing. So, but like I said, I've been doing that now for about 5 or 6 years. Some people have been appreciative of it. There has been a time or two. I tend to look at early matches or people's first championships whenever it comes time to share a video. And with some people, when they look at their first match, some have seen this kind of awkward because, of course, it's them starting out. But to be honest, when you look at their earlier matches, you see how they started off. You see if they have it, what they use. Thing that I'm not a fan of is people selling moves that never happen. But when you see matches with people and things don't happen the way they're supposed to, but they're calling an audible and they do something else, that impresses me. But it's just the little things that I've come across in terms of teaching myself about the history of wrestling, because in looking for these obscure things that no one's really watching, it's kind of helped me learn about the talent that's there.
And I do think you're selling yourself short a little bit. Like I would say, like, a lot of historians like aren't necessarily digging through like the unknown. They just happen to have access, like for whether it's luck or controlled. I know where to find this. Like historians are the ones putting things together from the evidence they find. And in your case, it may be YouTube, it may be Vimeo or whatever, but you're still like, bringing this information to life, bringing this to us, where it's just sitting in a corner of YouTube only getting like 25 views or whatever, despite the fact that, this is the now Damian Priest, or insert, whatever wrestler is your favorite right now. So like, don't sell yourself short on that, especially because like you're bringing a lot of information that, like, I mean, I'm not even aware of, and I'm a nerd, man.
The thing that makes it all worth it, or the thing that made it worth it, or why I kept doing it, is there was this one video, I don't even know which one it was, but I remember someone commenting on it that the match forged a friendship. I think it was like their first event together, or first whatever, but somehow a friendship was struck on this day. That was because of that night. That was because of that match. I'm like, okay. It's like, so when I do it, it's never really about me. It's all about the talent that's in it. And more times than not, if I could tag it and bring a quote bring attention to them. Like at the end of the day, for the memories that it brings out in people, that's what makes it worth it to me.
And I think, I mean, that's a good analogy just for, I think, wrestling in general, is you find something that resonates with you, like whether it's a character, whether it's a move, whether it's the emotions of the match, like that's what draws you to it, and what, you know, plants that seed to, you know, yeah, to grow into a full on like wrestling fan. And whether that's just you watch it every week on a Wednesday night, or, you know, you're like us who, you know, you are going through the depths of YouTube. I am well, now I'm ordering 8-hour plus DVD sets from the internet of long lost matches and whatever. But like, you know, that everybody who's a fan has that wrestling journey. And I think like being able to bring that information to folks, and even if it's first matches of folks even from 5 years ago, I think that's going to be important to someone to help kind of start their journey, or at least bring a new appreciation to, you know,
Yeah, I've had someone say someone actually taped this. Someone actually put this up because they didn't know it was out there.
I feel like that would be horrifying. I can't listen to some of the stuff I do now, let alone think of like the stuff I do when I was starting out or whatever. But that's a whole nother diatribe. But you've parlayed this into various friendships. I mean, that's indirectly kind of like how we hooked up, and then it turns out like, oh shoot, man, we both go to SCW. You know, we both are SCW fans or whatever. But like, you've taken it to like the next level. Like you've made like connections even. I mean, within the industry of folks who've not even really come to these parts, like looking at all the fun you had at the Wrestling Hall of Fame last year, like we're being able to hang out with Les Thatcher and all those folks. What's that feel like?
That by far has been one of the best days ever in my life. When it comes to Les Thatcher, um, my first exposure to him was on the MTV show. You want to be a wrestler, you want to be a pro wrestler, one of the true life ones. First time I saw Les Thatcher and Rory Fox by proxy. As time went on, Les Thatcher would do a show called Wrestler's Eye Radio with Mike Johnson on PW Insider. And the more I listened to it, it's like the more I got a lot out of what Les Thatcher would bring. And I would start talking to him from time to time here and there on Facebook and all that. And when I heard that he was going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in Waterloo, I had to be there. Because by this time, it's like he's one of those guys that you want to meet, one of those guys you want to have a connection with, one of those guys you just want to learn from. So when I was at Waterloo, I walked to the door, got checked in. He was sitting, talking to people, and I gave him his time because it's like being in the wrestling thing that we are, you want to give them a chance to connect with their fans, connect to their public, and kind of stay out the way. But I'm like, hello, I'd like to introduce myself to you. Introduced myself to him. He knew who I was, and on that weekend, he gave me more time than I ever truly deserved from anyone in a weekend that day, because I expected it to be hello and some small talk and be on our way, but he gave me quite a bit of time to where I had dinner with him a night or two. When had breakfast, we spent time together as well. It makes me speechless some days whenever I think about it. That after all this time, I'm meeting Les Thatcher. Les Thatcher's right there in my face. I could shake him. I'm talking to him. It's just.
I mean, that's beautiful. Like, I mean, that's, again, this is what I don't want to say strive for as a wrestling fan, but like that, those are kind of the guys that like the moments that you go like, I mean, my words are failing me too, and it's not even my story, man. You know, but like that's just like amazing just to be able to have that moment, and even like and be able to like in the case of Thatcher, like share those moments, because as you said, he was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame that weekend too. So like that was kind of a big deal for him. And for those of you who don't have the benefit of video, because, well, let's face it, most of this will not see the light of day. Face for radio over here, but Albert is wearing the official George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame T-shirt from last year. So, like, but no, that's amazing just to be able to have that experience. And I wish I had a way to, like, you know, properly segue this, but everyone knows I'm not a real podcast host. Like, I'm just a guy with a microphone and a Doink the Clown T-shirt. But I feel like that's kind of a payoff, though, for kind of like what you do, because you've managed to be, like you said, you've even managed to converse with him prior to being able to, you know, meet him, and now you guys, he's kind of aware of what you've been doing in the realm of professional wrestling, and now you kind of, you know, you have a full on friendship with that. That being said, I'm going to kind of like push on just a little bit because it's getting close to segue out time, but you know, as I said, like, we call it wrestling historian, wrestling librarian, whatever. But you are a regular peruser of professional wrestling wherever. In addition to SCW Pro, like, what are you watching, especially kind of in a live context? What are you know, like, what's on your rotation of wrestling to watch?
Nowadays, with my life being the way it is, I tend to watch the stuff that I share more than anything else, because it's very rare when I'm able to watch a show fully. But aside from SCW, one federation that's turned me on a lot is Dreamwave. A long time ago, it was under another name, another owner, called Revolution Championship Wrestling. Would go to a couple of shows and then just, I don't know, I think they changed location or whatever. But as time went on, I heard about this thing called Dreamwave. And I heard, oh, it's tied into Revolution Championship Wrestling. And I said to myself, I would probably always get back to it, but it's about an hour or so away. So at the time, I was like really super loyal to SCW Pro that it was rare for me to ever get to any other wrestling show. But I'm like, okay, it's like I need to get back into going to other shows on a regular basis. But Dreamwave had the show called Uprising 3, all female show. Myself, I enjoyed things like Mission Pro and Shimmer and Shine. I've always been about women's professional wrestling. I was spoiled on Medusa Michelli when I saw bootleg copies of her wrestling Japan. Women's wrestling really, really is something that I admire and appreciate. But the fact that there's an all-woman show taking place about an hour or so away from me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to go to this. And I went, and the show was excellent. Loved the show, and it just reinvigorated my love for going to LaSalle, and in this case for Dreamwave. Like, to me, aside from SCW Pro, Dreamwave is definitely worth checking out if you ever get the chance to, and ever in the area of LaSalle.
Oh, I full on agree. Dawn and I got to go to the original Uprising event before it became its own entity, and we actually, like, it's not that like interesting of a story, but we accidentally got to take part in like a pilot survey after the show, because we would, like, everybody's either filing out or everybody's at the merch tables or whatever. I made my rounds, talked to the folks who I wanted to. Dawn isn't social. Like, she doesn't like going up to the folks and just cold talking to the wrestlers. Like, she's got to kind of get to know them first. So she hung around for a little bit and then said, like, hey, you finish up, I'm going to go downstairs to the bar. And so I did. So, I talked to a couple folks, hung out with Zeta Steel just because of the MLW connection on that, and then made my way downstairs. And like, it was just the bartender, and a guy who used to go to like all the old Dreamwave shows, and then one of the behind the scenes guy, I never did catch his name, and then Dawn, and then eventually myself. And so she just ordered fresh drinks, so we're not going anywhere for a minute. And then finally, like, the guy from Dreamwave looks at us. He's just like, so have you gone to these shows before? Like, actually, I've been aware of your existence, but like, this is the first time I've managed to get tickets. It's like, what did you think of this event specifically? I'm like, no, you guys did a banger of a job. Like, it's great. And he's just like, cool. Like, we're looking to do more. And then he just kind of left it at that. And like, we're like, cool, that's great. Like, we'll keep it in our rotation. And then just like a week later, they're just like, Dreamwave Wrestling is proud to announce a sister promotion. And like, man. He was seeing if we're going to, seeing if there was enough to, if this is going to be popular enough to do their own thing. So yeah, Uprising is now its own thing, and they run, I believe, quarterly, usually in conjunction with Dreamwave.
Their next show is December 6th on a Friday.
It is
in the South.
I got tickets.
It's before their next show. Good
as Gold, I believe, because they
there
both have. Because that's their version of the Rumble, which also excites me because I'm also a Battle Royal guy. But no, Dreamwave and Uprising is worth a check out. So any listeners at home that aren't familiar with them,
Jay Repsol's awesome. Jay Repsol was totally awesome. He's got something on there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think they're on IWTV, I believe. Okay. Between that and Triller and 5 other streaming services. You can check out both those on IWTV if you have an IWTV subscription, which is totally worth the money because there's a ton of wrestling, old and new, to go through on IWTV. But no, I agree with you. Like, Dreamwave, like, is, as a whole, like, I think it's an underrated promotion that brings in top name talent, a lot from the Midwest, but they bring in a lot of names elsewhere as well. So they're one that puts on a great show, and their tickets go fast. So like, if you're in the area and you're looking to go, like, you need to jump. you almost need to jump on it before they announce what the card is too.
Yeah, first row tickets went out first day.
Yeah, luckily I almost never buy front row for big events like that. Taking too many guardrails. I've learned my lesson. Action's coming your way. It is. Move. But yeah, so I agree. Dreamwave and Uprising, both companies are amazing. And then of course, we're never gonna not plug SCW Pro enough. So we're gonna go ahead and wind things down here. I kind of off that. Albert, where can we find you online?
You can find me primarily on Twitter, Blusky, Facebook, Mastodon, and Hive, though Mastodon and Hive is just basically other places where I share videos. But you can find me on Twitter at Catch the Pinfall, Blusky, catchthepinfall.bsky something. And on Twitter, I do have a personal group called Catch the Pinfalls, and my own personal one. I also shared 4 or 5 other wrestling groups on there. If you're ever wondering where Catch the Pinfalls comes from, long time ago, NWA would run event centers, and they would call it their Catch the Pinfalls thing, because at the end of every show, it's like NWA Catch the Pinfalls, and I just kind of stuck. But yeah, typically any place that has Catch the Pinfall, odds are it's me.
I'll try to remember to throw at least a couple of those links down in our episode descriptor too, because as we put over the fact, like, your wrestling videos alone kind of like run the gamut of a little bit of everything, whether it's fairly recent or heck, even from 50 years ago. And I always kind of look forward to see what we got going on each day and try to find a little bit of time to catch that one match, because one match doesn't take that long to watch, even if it's breaking up the workday or late night watching. But that being said, Albert, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. And just, the general thank you for everything you're doing for professional wrestling, keeping the history alive with Catch the Pinfall, and just being able and willing to talk to anyone that has a beard and is willing to find you at CW Pro shows.
Been my pleasure, buddy.
MLW Confusion is a weekly podcast that is written and performed by Rob Kammer and hosted by Spotify for podcasters. MLW Confusion is part of the Urban Wrestling Network, and you can check them out and check out the Major League Pod on YouTube at Urban Wrestling NW. The background music for this section is Ruined by Day, performed by Alan Schroeder. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to support, please like, subscribe, and tell your friends, family, and enemies. Leaving a review is also helpful. Word of mouth of advertisement is very important for small podcasts such as this. Social media links can be found in the description, but Twitter and Instagram are at the Nova of Cass, TheNovaofCass, and Facebook is at MLW Confusion, all one word. If you'd like to support monetarily and help upgrade my equipment, please check out my virtual chip jar at ko-fi.com/Casanova. Or if you prefer more bang for your buck, you can go to patreon.com/Casanova, CASSONOVA, where for as little as $2, backers get access to the podcast early and without those pesky ads, plus other exclusive content. So join the crew that is headed up by Keith Wynn, Alan Schroeder, Alex McCarthy, and Elenia, and check it out. You can also find t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other merch at the Confusion Podcast on Teespring. Also, be sure to check out the description to find some affiliate links for, well, WWE merch, coffee machines, ice makers, and much more. For business inquiries such as ads and sponsorships, please email rzkammer, that's Kamerer, at comcast.net. Thank you for listening.